I'm really good. It's gorgeous here in Atlanta, and we're just I'm working on all kinds of stuff, and been
Okay,
gardening,
so
and
I've known, I want to say known you because we've had an
I
online
feel like I
relationship
know you. Yes,
since probably at least 2014 is when I got on Instagram and that's when we
yeah,
connected. And I think through, let's just be honest here, Emily Jeffords had a free
yeah.
Facebook group, and then there's a lot of us that have
Oh
been
yes,
connected since then.
I think I had forgotten the genesis because I was like, how did we all know each other back then? On like, and Instagram was so much smaller. Like it
It
felt
was
so
so
much
nice. It was
smaller.
fun back then.
And it really just I feel very lucky to have had such a cool creative community in that way. Like,
Yeah.
that my kids were still really little, I was just starting to do studio on my own, like, and it was, yeah, it was such a positive, like, sweet, it still is in a lot of ways. Like a lot of those, of us who started out then, I feel like are still cheering each other on and just
Yeah.
have done such different stuff since then.
We all have gone in a lot of different ways, and many who have grown to have really great businesses.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting, but it's just kind of, it's funny how we still reminisce on the good
Yeah.
old
The
days.
good old days.
But honestly, it doesn't even matter if it changed or not. We've changed so
Yeah,
much. I mean, like
totally.
that's almost 10 years now.
I know, which is so wild. And I didn't even realize I had like been officially Ink and Indigo for 10 years until like going through some paperwork for something else. And I saw that like had incorporated or whatever as LLC 10 years ago.
That's
So I'm like, I
crazy.
guess we need to have a party.
No,
Like
I
that
think
was
it
just
was,
me like in my basement by myself when trying to get kids to nap and like after they'd go to sleep.
I
And
know, right?
yeah,
And
it's
now
wild.
they're teenagers, right?
Yep, I have one teen. My oldest is a teenager. I have a 10-year-old and I have a 7, almost 8-year-old.
Okay.
So I'm
Did I miss that there was another baby, or maybe the baby
probably
was
I
new?
stopped posting almost anything about kids right about like my husband was never he did like information security stuff. So from the
Oh,
earliest
hey,
days,
hey, same
yeah, yeah.
exact.
Really? Yeah. So he was like, don't be posting about kids. Like he was never a jerk about it or anything, but like I would
No,
post some. But once I started to have like actual other like random people following me, he's like, that's really weird. If people are like, I'm like, it's not weird to everybody else, but I get why it's dangerous and seeming and weird to you for sure.
right. And
Yeah.
so I always wonder if people think like that I have a family and that I'm married, but
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't
I
really
mean,
share it ever because like
same.
maybe I'll show the back of my husband's
Yeah.
as we're hiking or something, but I don't
Right.
really share about, like I talk about it occasionally, but like I don't share family photos much. Probably
Same.
because, I don't know, when I'm online on Instagram, I'm thinking about art, I'm thinking about business, I'm not really thinking about sharing my
Yeah,
family.
same. And it's also, I like having a little bit of a boundary around it, but I also can appreciate others who have like managed to work it into their,
Yeah,
like, I don't think there's anything weird about that. It's just for me, it's always been much cleaner and easier to sort of, I mean, not always, but for a long time now. And also,
yeah,
like, I'm sure other like parents can relate to like you get so sick of being identified as a parent, especially through the young years, where you're just like, yes, yes, I am that, and I'm excited about all that, but but it's like I have this whole other side, and I don't necessarily always have to like marry the two.
thank you for saying that because I love, as I mean, you maybe you feel the same way, but having started a business, a successful business, and thriving, I love having a different identity other than mom, wife, because I was
Yeah,
a stay-at-home mom. I mean, I
yep,
guess
same.
technically I'm still a stay-at-home mom because I'm
Yeah. You're
always
like,
at the
watch
house.
me staying at home and doing all of this from
And then
right here.
busting my butt. So I do love having that identity that's my own, really. I
Yeah,
love having that, and that's how I identify online, really, as an artist and an entrepreneur. And I'm fine. Other people have beautifully, like you said, beautifully integrated their family life into their online persona. It just was never something that worked for me.
yeah,
And so I
same.
get that. Except for that, I want to say one thing that I have loved is occasionally, not always, but occasionally, you're really good about speaking out about what you believe in.
Oh, thank you.
And
That
I know
is,
that you don't make it your whole platform, but when I hear from you, I want to tell you what actually the impact that made for me.
oh,
I hate to go back to a time where, like right now, things I'm like, I've just turned off the news, I'm done with it. But after the 2016 election, we had our marches on Washington and
yes,
across the world. And believe me, I was devastated by that election, like
yeah,
really like you. And
yeah. Still gives me the, whew,
yeah, like it still makes me.
yeah.
So if anyone who's listening wants to know where I stand on that, it still makes me upset.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't keep that a secret, but
Yeah.
the fact that you got on a bus and went to DC to march,
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like, you know what, I can't just sit in my seat. So I didn't go to DC because that amount of crowds like freaked me out.
yeah.
So I marched in Annapolis, and I
Oh, that
felt
was
good
so,
that I could go out and feel that energy of
yeah.
everybody coming together.
Yeah. I mean, truly here in Atlanta, there are so many, I mean, just even on my neighborhood level, there are so many women in particular, but also like, people who identify all different ways, who
Right.
are such on the ground activists who are
Yeah.
just so inspiring and who are doing this all the time and are calling other people in all the time. And it's endlessly inspiring. It's frustrating to be pulled in so many directions where I don't feel like my day-to-day impact is what I want it to be. And one of the things I've loved catching up on your podcast is hearing you talk about, being an aligned business with, with the with your ethics and your, everything, like how you can have a bigger impact and how, how that's all sort of big picture better for the world. And I mean, I do think we have to like literally stand up for what we believe in and, be activists for all these things we care about, but also just how like as a business person, the positive impact you can have, the more successful you are, all of those things like that really speaks to me and is so important to like to what we're doing.
Even if we don't have all the time and energy to be full-time activists, just speaking
Right.
up for the injustices make a difference. And just think about that, Emily. The fact that I saw you get on a bus, it propelled me to have a bigger voice.
Yes, I love that. I mean, and I'm so motivated by these people who are continue like I a lot of times will go really dark on social media for months at a time, and that's when I feel, especially in the last several years, where there's so much bad shit happening in the
Yeah.
world that it
So
feels so like crazy to try to post anything. But that's a really hard cycle, and I actually would love to hear about other creatives like how they've sort of moved through that because to me it has been very hard to just keep posting about like I made this beautiful thing for a hotel. Well, there's like, all this.
another school shooting. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I don't think there's a perfect answer, but I do think I'm always more inspired to action by other people who are sharing. And like, that's such a good, like, obviously, like hearing that from you, that's like, that just shows you, like, that's the thing to do. Like, we don't have
Right.
to question that. That's
We
the
don't.
right thing to do.
And thank you,
Yeah.
Atlanta, by the way. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I've never been so proud of women and especially Black women for showing up
absolutely.
for our country. And
Yep.
yeah, anyhow, we don't have to go into a deep political
Yes,
discussion.
but you
Thank
and I
you,
could do a whole
Atlanta.
episode just on this for
We
sure.
could. And I
Yeah.
have taken time to speak up. And lately I've had a hard time speaking up because like pretty much my platform would have to turn into just a social justice platform
That's
because
how,
it is
same,
daily.
same. Where you
Right.
just want to be, the guy holding the sign, but like you holding the sign with like, also today this happened,
Right. And today
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
And today again. But then you come
yeah,
to a point, and I think this is where I've finally had to just come to accept that by continuing to put art into the world and to speak beauty into the world, there's still joy that's being spread. And when I get messages back from my customers, from my students saying how much it's made a difference in their lives, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm capable of doing. This is where my
yep,
emotional level is. I am not go down to DC, even though I live
right,
close to here, and march kind of a person on a regular basis, but I am one that can help transform lives in a small
yep,
and big way now that I'm
yeah,
coaching people in their business and have a bigger microphone with the podcast to remind people that their morals and their ethics and their beliefs are needed in this world and they can speak
yep,
about it. And so I'm like, if I can just
absolutely.
do a little bit, then I'm
You're
okay.
doing it.
That's
You're
what I
doing it. It's coming through. It really is. It really
do.
is coming through.
Thank you. I want to speak on the fact that you, because we're going to interweave this into how you got into your business, which to me
Sure.
is fascinating because I do talk to a lot of people who either sell art or they're teaching classes, but you have a completely different model, which was
Yeah.
only part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on, because that's
Yeah.
fascinating. Because selfishly, I just wanted to meet you.
Yes. Oh, I'm so thrilled. I mean, I do feel like I already know you, so I'm
I
just like,
know, right?
okay, girl.
Like, okay, I realized like there were times where I'm like, why does she just disappear off of Instagram? Doesn't she care about building her business? And I think I've been reflecting on it maybe for the last year, but especially as knowing you were coming up here, I'm like, she has built a business that doesn't require social media on a constant basis.
Yeah.
How brilliant and how freeing.
Yeah.
And tell me more.
Yeah.
Look, I don't think my business will ever be without social media because of the nature of what I built. But
Definitely.
there are ways to network and build an entire business without having to constantly be a slave to Zuckerberg.
Yeah. So I did, kind of in the earlier days, I did do more sort of offering my art directly to the public via my website through, a small launch. And I did that for a couple years, but in the background, or maybe not, maybe even, but in the background, I had always been building this business where everything I make, almost all of my clients are interior designers and art consultants. So those are people working mostly in the hospitality, some corporate, some healthcare, kind of fields. So I'd always been building that. Like that was always my kind of main in, to the art business. But, I did dabble with trying to sell to the public. But what I realized so quickly, which I really love, like I love being able to offer something up to the people who have been following along or people who are excited about my work. But what I realized is it's so hard to like the amount of sales I would have to do of, you know,
Bing, bing, bing,
a,
bing.
a, a bunch of 24 by 24s or 10 by 10, like it just doesn't make sense. I would have to sell an unreal amount of art to make an actual income. And so I really kind of realized, and this is something I think you've talked about a lot, is like, wait, if a niche can be a good thing, and like it's not a bad thing that I have this client base who already knows my work, loves my work. I have an inside because I was an art consultant for
Mhm.
many years, so I know what my client needs. I sort of know the pain points, and I'm professional, like
You are
I,
professional.
yeah, like I have something to offer because they work with all different artists, like art consultants and people who work in that way. That you don't have to have the sort of insider view to it that I have had to work with consultants. They want to work with a range of artists. They want to work with new artists, established artists. But I've sort of carved out this niche for myself, making this body of work that I'm sort of known for, and being able to create new things that sort of oftentimes can work in these spaces, but not exclusively. I mean, I think my art, should live everywhere, but
It does.
but this is definitely a
I think it
niche.
definitely transcends just the hospitality market.
Yes,
However, what you offer that many artists don't is a large scale. And
yes,
that large scale, many of us, because we are thinking of selling online to our customer base that we met on Instagram at,
right,
$200 or $300 a piece,
right,
and thinking someday we're going to make six figures off of that, and finally having the hard realization that it's really, like you said, it's really hard to build
right.
that
It's
unless
like, wait, the math is just it's not
yeah,
gonna math.
like I have to be so good at selling to customers online and produce so much that it's possible. Now, I do know artists who sell well
Of
to their
course,
customer base, but it is honestly, I mean, I can even talk to people who sell in galleries, and a gallery is going to take 50%, but it's totally worth it when they're doing their job in marketing. And so
sure,
you
yeah,
still aren't making a huge amount of money, even if you're selling weekly.
yeah,
But I love the fact that when you switch gears and you looked at it and said, okay, large scale work, right?
yes,
That we couldn't really sell online to our
right,
customer base.
yeah,
This is what hotels and hospitals and offices and big designer homes, that's what they need and they're looking for, and it's harder to
right,
find. And you have this unique point of view. It's very, I love, because it's dimensional and textural, a lot of your work. And it's
yes.
like
That's what
so
I'm all
it's just
about for
hitting
sure.
the market right there in this perfect sweet spot. And you're right. You picked a niche and it's really working for you, which also
Yes.
means that you're always in connection and networking with the designers and these other companies and not needing to be seen on social media as much.
For sure. I mean, I will say that no matter sort of what your approach is to your social media, it's worth having, right?
Right.
Because no matter what I do on my website, which I have spent so much time and money on, and I am so proud of where it is right now. It still has so far to go, but people are still going to screenshot stuff they saw on my Instagram and send it to me and ask me about it.
Right.
Designers, consultants.
Yeah.
So it's still worth doing, and it's still, going to play into your SEO and all these other things. And I'm inspired by it. Like I'm inspired by the other people I'm seeing on there. Like I was an early Pinterest girl. I actually invented Pinterest before it was a thing, and I'm forever bitter about this because I had the idea for Pinterest before it ever became a thing. Like,
Oh my
wouldn't it be
goodness.
amazing if you could just save all the images and it would be like a pin board, but it would be online? And my husband, who's a programmer, totally was like hearing me out. And then probably within a few months is when Pinterest came out. And I was like, oh man, my $1 million idea. Um,
Well, when
but
those ideas, when the muses come and you ignore them, they go on to someone else.
that's
Totally
right.
Elizabeth Gilbert in the Big Magic.
Yes,
So
yes. Ben or whoever from Pinterest got that one. But point being, like I've always been like a collector of images from like when I was a little kid. I was like
me
cutting
too.
out of Vogue magazines, cutting out
Mhm.
Interiors magazines. So that's I still get that from Instagram. I'm still a hard copy. I still love hard copy magazine and stuff too. But so I'm still getting a lot from it, and I do think it's worth putting energy into for sure. And obviously some people it is going to be their main, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Avenue for selling and connecting with people. But it does make me feel bad when I see more emerging artists get really frustrated when they put all this energy into this one thing. And what you said, own your platform. Like
Own your platform.
you just cannot simply count on any of these social media giants to be our home base and the main place. Like make a great website. It can be so simple. I really I think we all a lot of us creative entrepreneurs tend to overthink it, and are our own worst enemy,
Yeah.
but I think something is better than nothing as far as website goes. And, definitely put something up there so you have a place you're directing people back to, whether it's, just a website or hopefully a newsletter or, I still think
Yeah,
all those
for
things
sure.
are important. And I'm definitely trying to get my shit together around that because, from what I share on Instagram or even what makes it to the website is a fraction of what we're making.
I
Like
know.
there's so
I
much more.
personally
Like,
would love to see the documentation of just
yes,
projects you're working on, the videos. Like, I get it what you're saying. Like, it's not that you can go completely without Instagram. It's just that you don't
right.
have to be a slave to it. It's
Yes,
still a presence that you need to have. It's still you need to be putting some of what you do on Instagram, even if you're
absolutely.
not driving the majority of your clientele from Instagram. It's like
Yeah,
still like own your space on all the domains. In fact, one of the things I'm
absolutely.
coaching people to do is like you have an idea for a business, go buy the URL and see
Yes.
if it's
Oh,
available
that was,
and not the .net or the
yeah.
.biz. If it's not a .com, it's not your business.
Yeah.
You want
I
to
would
own
love to see how many I still own from all my like
it.
hair
Do you
brand
know?
ideas.
I
I
have
probably have
almost
several.
100 URLs. Almost
Do you
100.
really?
Yes, because
I
what I
believe that
always do
actually.
is I want to own it and I want the .com because I never want a trademark infringement, copyright
Yes,
infringement, business confusion. If I can own it,
totally.
like, and then of course I have to let things go, but a lot of them are
Right.
using a lot of
Yeah.
them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
so I
exciting.
get what you're saying though, like just even as, but your website is gorgeous. I just
Oh,
spent some
thank
time on
you.
there this morning and I'm like,
That
I'm just coming to Atlanta to come see your studio one day.
Please
I'm
do.
inviting myself.
Please come. This is something that that was one of the things about getting a outside my house studio is I want people to be able to come to this
Yeah.
space. I didn't really want to be like, come to my basement, before, although there's no shame in that.
No,
But
it's
this was
not,
definitely an
but
unfinished, rough basement that I was working out of prior to having a studio. And we've actually grown. I'm in this room is sort of adjacent to the more functional studio part. And so now we have a room for like I can think in and have a computer in where there's not this constant noise and where we can put finished works and not worry about, damaging them. So that's been very exciting to sort of grow into more space.
so I'm going to tell a little story and then we're going to go into your history.
Sure.
I wanted to do what you were doing. I didn't have any experience and I didn't know what I was doing, but prior to coming online as a teacher, I spent probably 10 or so months trying to build up a reputation with interior designers to sell art.
Hmm.
And there were so many mistakes that I made. Like my idea was in designer homes. I'd love to be in hotels. I would love to be in boutique hotels in France or whatever. Like, but
Yeah.
I brought on a whole group of artists that I was representing,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I didn't do any research beforehand. I didn't see how the market worked. I didn't understand how designers worked. I was great at connecting with them, but then only sales I was making was my own art and not all the people I was representing, which should have been a big clue right there is that they really don't need to see your whole portfolio. They can say, yeah, that's great. And then I would meet with them and show them everything and then nothing would work out. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's already hard enough to sell my art. Why am I trying to sell everybody
Oh my
else's
gosh, no kidding. Right.
art? Right. And I even had a gallery space to be able to showcase the artist, but it was like after 10 months, I'm like, okay, I quit this.
Yeah,
It
it
was
shouldn't
too
feel
hard.
this hard, right? Yeah.
It was too hard for me. However, had I gotten more education and understood the industry better and really just focused on selling my own work, I think that I could have made it work. But
Oh, for
maybe I
sure you
quit
could have.
too soon. Maybe I was smart enough to know that wasn't going to be a direction that could sustain me mentally and emotionally. And so I'm so glad I am where I am now. But I just wanted to let you know, like, knowing more about what you're doing and understanding your customers' needs before you even start probably will be like the key to success. And you understood your customers' needs because you worked in the industry. So now I'm
Right.
going to turn it over to you and see like your history, like having worked as an art consultant.
Hmm.
Like I seriously like, I'm going to be an art consultant, like did not work at all.
Yeah. No, well, it is it's funny because it's kind of this what you'd think would be a small niche within the art world, but then you think about it and you're like when you really think about it, you're like, wait, so every hotel needs art, every hospital needs art, every corporate headquarters needs art. And you're thinking, wait, who's putting all this art in these places? So,
Right,
you know, so these firms, and actually I kind of lucked out because Atlanta is kind of a hub for some
right,
of the earlier consulting firms. There were several here. So these people, are most of them art lovers, just like us. A lot of them, consultants are studio artists themselves formerly, or art history majors, or other interior design adjacent folks. And so what they're usually doing is working with an interior design firm that will be kind of handling the whole hotel project, but the art consultant is just handling the art. So they have to specify art for every space within a hotel, or where I would say most of my work is still in hotels.
Mhm.
So that's everything you'd see from like, monumental scale pieces that you'll see in a lobby down to like, oh, well, every corridor needs art, every guest
Right.
room needs art, all of those. So I had never heard of consulting as a, studio artist in college. Like when we talked about careers or something, like I got taken for a field trip to the Nightmare, like uh, carpet design cubicle. Like they're all doing like up here in North Georgia is like huge, huge carpet design places. And so they're like, this is one job you could do. And it was just like a mile of people on a desk designing, carpet. And I was like, oh no, no, that's not going to work for me. So, there were so many things that weren't on my radar as what you could do as an artist, but I always knew I wanted to be like an artist, right? But when I moved to Atlanta, I moved to Atlanta knowing that I would find something in the creative field, but I was ready to hustle. And I just happened to meet somebody who worked at a consulting firm, and heard what they did and was like, that is what a cool job. Like that's all the things I love. I've always been super passionate about business and, obviously
Mhm.
loved art. So I got in there as an intern by just being super persistent and annoying and showing up and being like, I'll work for free. So I did that for a little bit, became a project manager, and then became a consultant and did that for years. And then when I had my first daughter, consulting is amazing, but it is very, very like a lot of hours, a lot of travel. And I mean, I'm still working as many hours for sure, but it's a very demanding job. And I knew I wanted to be able to be more flexible when my kids were little. So
Mhm.
I slowly sort of transitioned and did consulting on the side, and more art. And then, I had this built-in clientele of people who knew me, who always knew I was a maker. And who I could sort of bounce ideas off of, or could just tell me I was, way off base with something. I had, friends in the business, and that was for sure such a good in.
Mhm.
But then there's so many people outside of, I mean, there are consulting firms all over the country, all over the world. And, I have gotten better and better, I think, over the years at being able to reach out to new people. And I have, my right hand here is named Laura. She's our studio manager. She's amazing for all of this. As we really are able to approach new consultants or interior designers or sometimes architecture firms and show them our range of work and sort of like, lay out our
Mhm.
capabilities, I think, in a really clear way, which has helped grow. And then obviously, it has helped to keep posting my work online in all different ways, because I would say I still get several new clients a year from just consultants and stuff who find me online. So
Yeah.
it's still important to do. And one thing I was going to say about your experience is, for folks who are maybe thinking about reaching out to consulting firms and are approaching interior designers and consultants about projects, is the lead times are long for these things. So it is not until probably a few years of doing it that you will have enough consistent work in the queue coming through to be that sole income, or like a hugely supplemental income, way to sell your work. So it's definitely, it takes a while, because a lot of these projects, they might approach you or you might approach them when they're just starting. It's blueprints. The ground hasn't been broken.
Right.
So
And
sometimes,
so it's the consistency. If that's the field you want to go in, I didn't give it much time at 10 months.
right. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah. And I think,
And that's okay. Like I don't regret that, but I do look back, and like my husband had told me many times, he goes, you quit, you've changed directions again. But I think that would have been a successful path for you had you stuck to it. Maybe I
right.
just needed to reach out to Emily Mann and say, like, what can I actually be doing?
I am so open book. Anytime anyone wants to ask me questions, I'm so happy to help, because it is like a weird little mysterious niche that there's not that, I feel like, not a ton of info still about, how people can work with consultants and
Right. Like
designers.
I knew the end goal is like all these, like you said, all these places need art.
Yeah.
And it depends on the situation, but how much they're willing to pay for it, whether it's prints or it's
Right.
originals or commissioned or whatever. And I think my favorite job I did was my arches were sold, and like I sold 8 of them and had them all framed beautifully. And that was a nice big chunk. But then after that, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I
um,
don't know what it was. Like I know that, like, and I have a list of 100 ways that people can make art or make money as
yeah.
an artist without selling their art, or traditional ways of
Right.
selling your art. And I know that's probably on the list, but like that's one of the reasons I love talking to people like you, is like, let's just show the things that we don't even know are possible. So many people get there, they've become proficient as an artist. I highly recommend that you're proficient before you go
Yeah.
and try to make a big business at it. Know what you're doing, know what you're making, know your voice. And then they're like, okay, so now I'm supposed to get into a gallery, or I'm supposed to sell my art online, which is great. But thinking outside of the box is what really connects us to the bigger opportunities and the potential to make a better income, you
Yes.
know?
And it
But
keeps
that's
us
where like
excited about our own work. Yeah.
yeah, find the expert in the field and start learning more about it instead of winging it like I did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's no joke. And I mean, I'm still learning stuff, I'm still kind of, um, each project brings, it's all sort of different, right? Like I do so much different work and at different scales and for different people in different spaces. So, I'm still learning stuff even now, however many years later. So yeah, and I would like to like share this, listening to your podcast. I'm like, man, I should try to do a course, but like, just like that's such a, like it feels like a big thing to take on. But I'm like, man, it would be great to just be able to share this info with people. Cause
Well, maybe we'll have to talk about how
yeah,
you can do that because it's a very valuable skill and it's not like it's going away. There's still, 8 billion people in the world and counting, right?
yes. I mean,
Um,
we just had 2 meetings this week, like with people I hadn't even heard of, like consultants, and I've been in this business for so long, and there's still people, and most of the people I was having a meeting with look to be, quite young. Like there's people, like there's fresh new consulting
right,
firms popping up, like
right.
it's and I do think there'll be continue to be like new ways that people want to see work too. I think it's interesting. There have been some people doing more like digital stuff or more interactive stuff, and that's not my bag, but I think it's really interesting and exciting to see.
Where did you go to school? What did you study?
I studied just sort of broad studio arts with a focus in fiber arts at Georgia College and State University, which is just a small liberal arts school in middle Georgia. And definitely was not where I intended to go. I was actually enrolled at SCAD, and my
Okay.
mom worked there. And my siblings were already enrolled there. And if you had a parent working there, the dependents got to go for free. So
Which
I come
is
from a
great
family of
because it's an
all artists.
expensive
Yes,
school,
right.
but
That was it, otherwise would not have been an option for me. And so I had enrolled. I was already in this like summer program there. Had my room, my freshman roommate already sorted, dorm sorted, everything. And then I think it was either 2 or 3 weeks before school was supposed to start. My mom got laid off from her job. So I had to, I mean, I had my whole life was planned. I had it all. I'm going to stay with my high school boyfriend forever, and I'm going to still hang out with all my friends here because it was I went to school outside of Savannah, and so of course, just had to like that figure out new school, new place, who's still accepting the Hope Scholarship, who still has space for anybody, and so Georgia College was one of the only options, and it ended up being such a amazing experience, life transforming experience. So many people I met there are my family now, like
oh,
my professors, some of my other peers, just amazing. Like a tiny little art department where it was so intimate and just transformative. So, I definitely feel lucky that I ended up there, and those relationships have continued to be huge. But it
it's
was,
good to hear that because so many people say they went to art school and came out destroyed from it
yeah,
because of the critiques, because of the competition, because of all of that. So you are a Georgia girl, so moving to
I,
Atlanta makes sense. So
yes, I have been in Georgia since I was in high school. I am originally from Michigan, but I've also lived in North Carolina for a big chunk of my childhood. So if I have a confusing accent, that's why.
you don't
But
have
yeah.
a Southern accent.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. More of a Midwesterner, but I feel like a true Georgia girl for now. Sure. True
Yeah.
Atlanta woman.
Yeah, I'm from California, but I was just talking with my son this morning on the way to school, and he's like, Mom, haven't you lived in Maryland longer than you ever lived in California? I'm like, yeah, actually.
Oh, wow.
So you're a
Yeah.
Marylander. Like, I guess
Yeah.
I'm not planning on leaving this area. Like,
Yeah.
this is where I raised my family. So yeah,
Right.
I do. It's definitely a different feeling here on the East Coast. But I noticed over the last decade, as I spent time on Instagram, where's all the cool art coming from? The South has a real strong art vibe. Like,
It
and you think
really,
it's supposed to come from New York or LA, and I'm like, so all the art's really coming out of the South.
it really is.
Yeah.
And Atlanta especially, but all over. And I'm so lucky to have several friends who are in a bunch of different art orgs here. Like I feel like I've a little bit been a hermit for the last few years as I've had, I've got 3 kids, two like just very intense parenting years. And obviously with COVID and everything. But so I feel like I've been a little bit like not paying attention to what's going on
Mhm.
just locally. But then once you like look up and you're like, holy shit, like I'm in like the mecca for Black art, like Black artists, Black
Yeah.
creatives. I'm in, like there's so many, it's so diverse, it's so exciting. There's so many cool organizations doing really like outside the box, outside the gallery kind of things. It's very exciting.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to make that is one of my goals is to get my ass out of the studio because I'm one of those people who will just, I am head down worker.
Me
I
too.
like to labor and
I
I
spend
have to
way
sort of
too much time.
work.
I'm like,
Yes,
I've gone a whole week without even leaving
right.
the office, which
Yeah,
is pretty much
yeah,
every room in my house now. My family makes
yeah,
fun. So,
yeah.
so you started off with studio art and
Mhm.
then worked your way into doing the art consulting, probably with a lot less time making your own art during that
Right.
season.
Totally.
So I could see why you would want to come back while the kids were young, because you can make art from home. It's still a lot of
Yeah.
hours, but yes, it does give flexibility. And that was one of the appeals to me as well. Like, I really
Yeah.
want to move my way into this field. And even though there were times where it was like, well, babe, you're making less than minimum wage. I'm like, I know. He goes, you could go
Yeah.
work
The
at
breakdown
Starbucks
is brutal
manager.
for those. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, okay, Starbucks
Yeah.
manager, I might be
Yeah.
making 80 grand a year, but that's it. That's the cap
Right.
for me. I'm like, I know I can do my own thing. I am so motivated to figure out the business side of things because I love business. I
Same.
love marketing. It's no secret. You hear it on my
Yeah.
podcast. And I am so glad that even through all that trial and error and different galleries I worked for and all of that, that I found my niche. And I love seeing how your art has transformed and your niche. And like really I was at a hotel on the Eastern Shore, and I'm like, well, photograph. That's all Emily Mann's art in Cambridge.
Oh, that's so
And
cool. Oh, yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh my
so
God, that's
I
exciting.
recognized it in a heartbeat. It's like you really have enough of a distinct voice that if anyone's seen your work, they know your work.
Oh, thank you. That is something that is challenging for sure
Yeah,
for me because I am sort of I am so inspired by so many things. I would definitely say texture for sure is sort of
yeah,
a unifying factor usually in my work, and most of what I do has some sculptural kind of element or a lot of what I do. But it is hard when you have so much work and such a varying like it was a little ridiculous trying to pare down the website, and I think I probably could still stand to pare it down some more, but because I know the way that consultants use images, I'm like, I'm in sort of a niche where actually having a lot of images and a lot of good images is
mm,
okay.
yeah,
Like I would maybe not recommend that for every artist and
right,
all their bodies of work, but because I know when consultants are pulling for a project, they have to pull so many images in for their first round, right? Like so tons of they're trying to show a ton of different stuff. And so they might it being in that slightly different colorway, the same kind of version of art, but just might be what pushes that over to make it into that book, to make it into that project.
right,
So, you
exactly.
know,
Yeah, so I can see why you're like that variety. It's still there's still a voice and a thread through all of it, but I can see what you mean. Like sometimes you're like working on projects that are like the scope of it and the inventiveness of it. It's like must be like
it's the best.
hugely a relief to have that. Like it's not like they're like I want you to paint trees and I want you to paint trees forever and ever and ever
Yeah,
again.
I
It's
would
like
go
so many different. I
nuts.
know, right?
I couldn't.
So many ways that you get to experiment with materials. Like how did that evolve? I really like I want to talk a bit about like the
Yeah,
artwork itself and some of the exciting projects you worked on, and then maybe we'll move into some advice on how others could
sure.
get into the field or what they need to be
Yeah,
doing to manage something like this.
yeah. So similar to you, I come from a whole family of artists and makers, and so literally have always grown up around people making things like from handcrafted brooms to canning food to
Yeah,
woodworking. My dad's a woodworker. Like all my family's creative. So I literally have always been making stuff and making stuff out of everything.
yeah,
And I think I've always kind of had a tendency to go for like um, many tiny things obsessively made, making up a larger thing. Like that has been a through line from early days. Like
there
my
we go.
college work was found textiles wrapped like kind of paper mache style around packing bubbles, like the big packing bubbles. So I made these like orbs that then you could pull out like a balloon. And then I strung all those orbs together around a giant metal form, and it was all lit from inside. Like I've always been obsessed with sort of just making something out of whatever. And I think that has just kind of been the through line is playing with materials. A lot of my work is assemblage. A lot of it is going to be large scale things made up of small things. It's just like I just love it. And also
That's a
just really,
really great way to describe it. A lot of
yeah,
small things that make a big thing.
yeah, right.
There's the
And
through line.
it's not the most profitable way to make large work, but I cannot help myself. Like I will try to push myself to like develop a new idea, and inevitably I'm like, oh, but what if I like repeated that times a million, and then did that, and then stuck it all together, and it's just like. But I love playing with materials. I've been invented. I would like to say. I don't know if that sounds silly, but different ways of working with this material, paper clay, which most people were working with on small scale, sort of like crafty kind of things.
Right.
But I discovered works perfectly for a ceramic like medium, but without a lot of the challenges that ceramic would pose to working in the settings that I work in, right? And I don't have to have a kiln, and I can use any material to finish it, which is very exciting. And I've sort of made up all these ways to work with it. And one of the really exciting ways is that I do all these, a lot of times botanical, but it can be seashells, it could be rope, it could be fabric. imprinting into slabs of this clay. And then once I dry it, which I dry in just regular ovens, I have several ovens here, then I torch it. And the torching brings out the texture that's imprinted in it. And it's like magic. It's so fun to do. It's fun to watch. And so then there's this whole line of work I have that incorporates that technique. And it's just sort of made up and really fun. And then I've also played a lot with encaustic, which that is not something I sell as much for hospitality just because it's such a specific fragile kind of surface. Not fragile, but more fussy than a canvas or whatever. But that I could go full rabbit hole and just do that for, I mean, I love encaustic and I would love to like just keep playing with that. But I've, made up a bunch of different ways of working with that. That's been,
And
fun
behind
and
you right
exciting.
now is fabric.
Yeah, so this would be like something I would call like my fringe series. So that's heavy duck canvas, layers and layers. So we actually use paint like dye for those. So like I'll take, any kind of interiors paint, water it down varying degrees and paint all this yardage. And then we cut it into fringe and I mean, we've made huge. I think we had a piece go out recently that was like 15 feet wide. And those can
Wow.
be done in any finish. So like that was all blues. We call that the Canadian tuxedo. But then there's also like gilded, like heavily gilded. And I just love that. I love playing with the
So,
texture. There's, like this is like a paper version of something I often do in plastered canvas. These are sort of like the Indigold works that are like my
yeah,
most sort of signature, probably
I have a
two-dimensional
little,
body of work.
I have a little one of those.
Yes,
At some point
yes,
you sent one to me, so
yes.
I treasure it.
Yay. Yay. That makes me so
Um,
happy.
I I'm dying right now because I'm like, that's the dream studio for me, is to just whatever the material is and then find a million ways to work with it and just get as
Yeah.
inventive as possible. Like, to me, that curiosity is the most fun you can have being an artist. And
Yeah.
I love it. And one thing I'm like, oh, so she has like a Warhol studio. Like, she's a creative director. She invents these ideas, and then she has studio assistants, studio
Yeah.
artists that help you repeat and recreate the work,
Yeah, this is
right?
sort of a new, so exciting and so freeing and just amazing part of my business. So during COVID, I was, parenting my kids, teaching them on screens all
Teaching
day at
them.
home, and then but somehow business was still steady through COVID, which we
I
thought it was
know.
going to be decimated
I
instantly. Like we
know.
were just like, game over. And thank everything that it stayed steady, and I had enough projects on the books to keep being busy, but I didn't have any daylight hours to be here. So I was working, I would get do the kids and then get them to bed and then head into the studio about 8:30 and then work until 2 or 3 in the morning. And so it was bananas. So and then I'd be back up with them at 7:30 or 8 in the morning to do virtual school all day. It was the darkest time. Like I don't even remember, like I've kind of like tunneled it out. Like I don't even remember all the details. Like
Yeah,
it's
you
such
know,
a
it's so weird because it was supposed to be that quiet, peaceful time where we had nothing to do, and that was probably one of my busiest years ever.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I am grateful. Like there were so many beautiful silver linings to that
Right.
time with my kids being little and being there with them, and I'm glad we were able to stay home and stay safe as long as we were. But it was so hard, and I was starting to lose it. Like I was getting to the point where this was like the final, like last straw kind of thing. Was like I was like driving home, and I was like hallucinating. Like I was thinking that like there was stuff in the road, nothing in the road. It's like okay, this is not cannot do this anymore. And it just so happens that my friend who had been really involved with the studio at one of my kiddos' schools reached out and was like, "Hey, like I'm not, school's closed, so and I'm not going back anytime soon. So if you need any help, like I only have a part-time gig right now. I don't know if you'd be comfortable having some in the studio." But so basically what we did for months then is she would work in the day when I was here with my kids. I mean, at home with my kids, and then I would come in at night and do like a night shift. And so and then Fridays I would come in, my husband would take off work on Fridays and I would show her the ropes, right? So show her, here's what we're working on. I need you to make 8 trillion of these, rolled cut petals, whatever. And
Right.
so it was a really tricky way to work because, she like gets stuff super quick. But even that is like, it's hard for me not be able to be here to like teach her stuff. But, it ended up being the best impetus for finally getting help because until then I had made
Wow.
everything myself. So
And
it
and
was
now you
bananas.
have a manager and
Yep.
two
Yep. Yep. So
assistants.
then we brought on Sam during like maybe this massive project that had like over 400 custom pieces for one hotel. And so she has done she's a multi-passionate creative as well. So she's done all different kinds of things, but she can kind of jump in wherever. So that was only supposed to be just like a few months gig, and then it's just turned into we just keep being busier, and it keeps being more freeing for me to be able to do other stuff and not just be just laboring. And
Right.
so, the sort of dream is to, I don't necessarily want to get hugely more like I don't want to have a huge staff or anything necessarily, but I would love for everybody to be fully employed here, like, 5 days a week, full-time
Right.
gig. Right now they're both 4 days a week. And then Fridays are my solo studio day, which
Yeah.
is amazing, where I sort of get
Fridays
to
are
make
my
stuff
day.
that's
I schedule nothing on Fridays too.
same. You have to be militant about it. Like it'll be
Very.
like, oh, we need to have this. I'm like, not on Friday. We can't do it because it's. I was really getting a little burnt out on being like a boss and being, just constantly driven by client deadlines and everything. And I'm just so. What keeps my energy up is making new work. Like I have to be excited about what I make.
Oh,
So it's been amazing, and it's been helpful to my overall business because I've made a ton of new work that then we added to the licensing line, which is a huge
right.
part of what I've been trying to do over the last few years. So
Oh my
it's,
goodness. I just,
but
ooh, it's so exciting.
come to Atlanta.
I
There's so
will
much.
wait until the summer's over
Oh
though.
yeah, don't come in the summer.
I'm
Yeah,
such a wimp about the heat, but I would
yeah,
love, I've always wanted to see Savannah. I would love to come to Atlanta.
yes.
But
There's
all
so
in,
many other amazing artists here. It's, bananas.
yeah.
It's
I
a
mean,
great creative
maybe
stop.
I need to go and teach art in Atlanta for a couple of days
Yeah,
and give myself a reason to
yeah.
go.
Come teach our business.
I would love to.
I'll host you here
I
anytime.
want to know what do you feel like is on the horizon for you now?
Well, hopefully, continuing to sort of be a better business owner, like learning more about how to like, hand things off and grow this business in like a sustainable way,
Mhm.
is, just a huge, I really am interested in creating better systems for things. That's sort of like the nuts and bolts kind of piece. Um, Creatively, I would like to be able to teach, some of the things I know, some of the special techniques I've made up, or
Yeah.
whether it's like I have been asked and been interested in doing stuff like that, like getting more workshops into here, where
Mhm.
really the dream is to be in a bigger, better, more functional space within the next 2 years, which is like
That's so
I
cool.
have it like it's all in my brain, and of course everything around here costs $1 trillion, so I don't think we'll be able to buy anything on the timeline that I would like to buy anything. But big picture, I would love to have a space where I could have more people in, where it's not just a production sort of studio like it is now. I would like to be able to do more creative things in other ways, other than just, the commissions and stuff that I'm doing. But I'm hugely motivated by that work. Like we've been doing some really cool on-site installations, which is really fun and exciting and challenging and a little scary every time. So that keeps it fresh. But yeah, so I would definitely say getting a new space and getting a larger space and sort of just professionalizing. I don't know if that's a word. A lot of the ways that I do stuff here, because so much of it is just crap I made up, and it's not necessarily the best way to do something. Like it's like,
Well, you
oh,
come
why are you
off
doing it that
very
way? And it's like,
successful to me.
oh, thanks. But like you'll be doing something a certain way, and then when you're trying to teach it to somebody else, you're like, well, maybe we could examine we could examine this. But I love this area that I'm in. This is called Avondale Estates. It's its own separate town, but it's basically a part of Atlanta. And
Mhm.
there are so many other creatives just in my literal building, but then all around. And
Oh, yeah.
so I'm so inspired by the people who are doing all these creative projects, and sort of it's all kind of happening here. And my carpenter, who's like my right hand Zach, is like right down the street, so he can literally just drives stuff over on his truck or
Right, for
whatever
like
and drops it.
framing
Yeah,
and all that.
yes. So it's all right here. And then,
Oh,
so I would love to stay in this area, but sort of expand what I'm doing here a little bit, and then really empower the people I'm working with to sort of grow into bigger roles, for them. And, hopefully also like bring other people along with us. Like I really want to just be wildly successful and just
well,
bring everybody along. And
that's
that's
how I
sort of the
always
dream.
feel too. I'm like, okay, so if I rise, then everyone around me gets to rise and everyone makes
Absolutely.
money and everybody feels good and we're
It's
all
working
like,
so far, it really is. And it's
yeah.
amazing to see. And I'm so motivated by that. I did not come from any kind of money. I am hugely motivated by security, like
Mhm.
helping other people reach security.
Mhm.
And that's
And
exciting to
providing
me.
for your family
Yes.
and knowing that it like for me knowing it's not all on my husband's shoulders anymore
Yeah.
and that I can pay for the kids college like all my
Yeah.
kids like they'd have no college debt right now.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean,
Although
what a
none of them
gift.
went to a fancy college, they're all been going to the community
Fancy
college, which is
colleges.
great.
I did not go to a
In
fancy
tech,
college.
they're in tech, so
Yeah.
really need
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But it's
No.
all like no, they're gonna be able to walk into life with no debt, and I think that
Yeah.
that's all because of the chance I took on myself to build this business,
Yes,
right? And
absolutely. No, it's such a gift.
Right.
It's a big
So,
deal.
what's the scope of a project? Like, what's the kind of like dollars? Like, what would 400 pieces for a hotel bring? And
That
I
was
know revenue, there's so much cost involved.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, that was a six-figure job for sure, but the the profit would be not I would do that totally differently if I was to approach that again. So that was
Wow.
like one of those like, someone liking something they'd seen me make. Could we adapt it for this? Yes, we think we can. And then once you really did it on that massive scale, it was like, okay, we did it. We did a great job at it, but wow, we wouldn't do that again. But the budgets for these projects could range anywhere from, a $1,200 original, like smaller, two-dimensional work to a $15,000 installation behind a reception desk.
Hmm.
I work a little differently than somebody who might have a lot of gallery relationships additionally, because when I price something out to a consultant, I'm giving them the net price. I have no control over what they mark it up. And that's a big difference because, with a gallery, if you have all these relationships with galleries, the price has been set by your sort of specific market, right? So then you would have to sort of factor that into how you're working with consultants. So typically, like if an artist is represented by a gallery and the consultant is going through the gallery to get that artist's work, the gallery usually offer anywhere from like
A
a 10
little
to
discount.
20%
Yeah.
discount to consultant. But because people are working directly with us and because we have it kind of costs what it costs, right? Like we've already kind of figured out what our cost is for materials, for time. We've kind of have these formulas for it,
And for
and
profit.
and for profit. And then, so this is what it costs. And then, especially with these projects where I mean, they might be specking hundreds, sometimes thousands of pieces of artwork on a project. They're not necessarily looking at the per piece in the same way that an individual purchasing one piece of art for their home, right? So
Okay.
it's more like this whole project has a $4 million budget. How does that get broken down by area? Does that make sense? So it's like,
Right, exactly. And
so
then
the
they mark
margins
up.
might
Once they
vary.
buy from you, they mark up to make their margin.
Right. But that markup, I guess what I'm saying is the difference is I don't have a lot to say over their markup, right?
Right.
And their markup might be dictated largely on their overall budget and those locations. So sometimes a consultant might be taking a lower markup, have a lower margin on a really big dimensional piece in a public space because it just is an expensive piece, but they want that piece on the job. So they might lower their margin on that dimensional work or that very expensive piece to get it into the project, but they're making up their margin on a bunch of framed
Exactly.
prints.
Okay, that's really interesting. So from the art consultant, it's like the overall. All right, I've
Hmm.
spent, let's just say I've spent 50 grand. I'm marking it up to 75, which was the budget. So there you go. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter how much all these cost. This is
Exactly.
the margin.
Yep. And we
Right.
just try to be really clear when we're quoting things, especially people who we haven't worked with yet. This is the net to us pricing. So you do whatever you do, but this is what you'll need to pay us. Like try to be
Right.
very clear about that. Most people are very comfortable talking in net terms, so they understand
Right.
that. But then also we have this entire licensing line, and that's been something that I've been working on, and I hope that a lot of other artists can sort of incorporate into their business model if they're able to, because I think it's a great way to work where you are not inventorying a bunch of prints, okay? You
Right.
are creating high resolution files, which is, and having them edited and having them, saved so that they can be presented on your website. All that costs money for sure. It's a big investment. Plus you made the work, right? But
Can I tell you how much money I've invested in taking my art to a professional to have it high resolution
it's no joke.
scanned and color corrected and these like massive file sizes ready to go and they're still sitting on the computer, those files, and I haven't even tried to license them yet.
Okay, I'm giving you homework. I would like
Okay.
you to, if you still have part of the Kellee Wynne empire, as you can buy Kellee Wynne artwork. So if you go to the licensing portion of my site, you will
Uh-huh.
see all these images, right? And they basically have a name and a SKU. And then we work out licensing agreements per project, per client for whatever, we have a range, a formula that we're working with,
Yeah.
but it all depends. Do they want it this big? Do they want it that big? They determine a lot of that. But almost every consultant and interior designer now
Needs.
has a preferred printer that they work with, so they're used to doing
They
it. So
just
then
want the image.
yep, they just want the image. So you upload a file. You've signed an agreement first, and you've gotten your money first. But then
Yes.
you but then you upload a file, and your job is done. So you did all the work. Don't keep
Now
doing
I
that
just
work
need to
over and over
connect
again.
with the people who want to license it.
Right?
Okay, so everyone
Exactly.
who's listening, there's another model.
Yes.
When you become proficient professional and you have them done right, you
Yep.
can be looking to just license them to individual designers or companies rather than the only thing I thought was a licensing was like people who are going to get stuff printed to go into home goods. And I don't
Right.
really prefer to do
Yeah.
that. I'm not against it, but
No,
like,
certainly not. But
I mean, if anthropology wants to connect with me, I'm okay
knock
with that.
knock. Yeah.
I'm not going to shut that down, but
Yeah.
I have dozens of images that I've taken to professionally.
Yeah. If you want any input
Really,
on that,
really
I
as
can totally
professional.
help you there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
See,
for real,
somebody
because
even
sometimes it
pays
helps to have an
attention.
idea of what type of work sells the best or like is, but
Yeah,
I feel like it doesn't hurt to have it up there and to be, having that as one thing in your sort of portfolio when you're selling your artwork. Because I
absolutely.
think within the last 5+ years, it's become more and more just common that you're talking to other people who know about the printing and stuff. Like you're not trying to re-explain everything to a consultant every
Right.
time. They already know. They're like, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They know
Just send the file.
everything they need. They know what paper they already want to put
Right.
it, how they're going to
Exactly.
frame it. Blah. They just need the image, and it's got
Yes.
to be the right image, the right colors, the right design, the right feel for the
Right.
space. There
Because
it
I
is.
inventoried prints when I was doing the direct sales.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
did
I
that.
still have some if anyone would
By
like
the way,
some.
me too. Like I'm like these prints are now 8, 10 years old.
They're,
I
it's
I
probably
want to.
bad juju. We should, yeah.
I have actually, well, I've given some away when I sell originals, and I've actually destroyed a lot of old stuff because
Yeah,
when it gets to a certain point, it's like,
yeah,
and then
you
I'm
do
getting
have to.
through a phase of print on demand, which is much better because I'm not inventorying anything. But now I haven't, like in a year and a half, I haven't sold anything because I just have put so much effort into my courses and my coaching that
Yeah,
like I've lost touch
you
with that.
can't do it all. Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
do it all, but I did hire a manager as well, by the way.
Oh, good for you. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
incredible.
absolutely once you get to a certain point, you really, if you want to
Yeah.
grow, you need the support.
Oh,
So
for sure.
I heard this on a podcast I was listening to. You wouldn't open up a restaurant and say, I'm going to do it all, and then
Right.
not hire cooks
Right.
and waitresses,
Yep.
or servers. We call them servers now.
Yes.
Be honest, I'm still catching up with.
Me too. I still have to catch myself on lots of stuff.
I know. I'm like, so what? Like,
Yeah, why did
why?
we think we needed to program our own website, be our own photographer,
Oh,
manage all of our own schedule? Yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty bananas
I
because
know when you're
we're
first
good at
starting, you
figuring
feel
it
like you
out
can't
too.
afford it, but like
Yeah,
quite quickly, if you pay for it, you actually have the energy to do the thing only you can do, which is design the artwork,
yeah. I
design
would
the
say that's
artwork.
probably the one of the single most like important piece of advice that I would give to people who are serious about creating art as their, business is to level up as soon as you can with
As
as soon as you can.
as
Like it's
soon
going
as
to
you
feel a little uncomfortable and obviously you can't be irresponsible about it, but I waited a really long time to get a
need
studio to where I was compromising the work I was making by the space I was trying to make it in. And and it was so nerve-wracking because, I was like, wait, this is free and then that's going to be this much a month and then like what if I have a bad month and it's going to really be all this pressure on me. Literally the moment I stepped into a studio, I swear to God, it's just like everything else met that mark.
right,
And the same with hiring help. I mean, it has been the same. It's been true for that. And obviously, you still have to have goals in mind, and you still have to
right.
be tracking these costs. This is not just like, but
Mind
it's
your money. I said that
yes,
last podcast.
absolutely,
Mind your money, but
yeah,
still, like really, the software. Like I listen to people and they're like, well, I just want the cheaper version. Like
no,
Teachable's price just doubled, so I'm going to move everything to a cheaper place. I'm like, why not just make more money?
right,
Make more
exactly,
money, stop making more work for yourself.
yes,
Don't like try to like sure just get something started when you're just getting started, but I think the mindset of okay, I'm going to pay for the premium Squarespace and get some help to build it and beautiful make something
yes,
beautiful or hire or do a trade with a friend for some really good photography, someone else to do the design work, like find a way that you're not like cheaping out so much that you don't have any energy left to spend on actually
right,
making artwork and showing up and talking to your ideal client. Like
right.
that's more important than
Yeah, it's really easy to shortchange yourself in that way,
yeah.
especially if you are somebody who, like us, is very motivated by figuring things out and gets excited about like nerding out about a lot of the stuff on the back
Yeah,
end. But it's at a
so
certain
nerd yourself.
point, like just, let other people be good at what they're good at. You don't
Yeah.
have to be good at
And
everything.
I hired my assistant at the end of 2020 when I realized I needed a real assistant and not just my friends
Yeah.
to help me with my business. Like she's trained admin, she has years of experience, but it
Oh,
still
that's great.
took me well over a year to learn how to just let go. And now I'm like, so tell me what I'm supposed to do.
I'm
Like
finally getting to there. I'm finally like,
yeah,
and I really want other people to feel empowered too, to like own
right,
parts of this. Like it doesn't, for so long, it has felt like me, like this business is
right.
me. And in a lot of ways, I'm having to learn to let go of a little bit of that. Like it is not
Yes,
just me,
right,
you
because now
know?
it is actually our business
It is,
because even though she is a contractor for me, I've given her a percentage.
right? Oh, that's
I've
amazing.
given her a commission, so I watch how I mean, she's a lifesaver and now become one of my best friends, but I really love the collaborative, the whole thing about all of us rising together. Like I'm like you on that. Like this becomes us, this becomes we do better, our families do better, and we can support other people
Yeah.
more. And I don't know, I'm obsessed with business. I love art. The art was the first part that came, but I think that maybe some days I think art was the reason, was just my mode to be able to have a business.
I think it goes hand in hand, and it was obviously always a myth that artists weren't business savvy. I mean, it's always been untrue.
I
And
think
I think now we just get to be more visible and have all these other channels of sort of showing people how dumb how dumb that is. Where it's just like,
doesn't it feel empowering though? I have to say, like there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm proud of being a mom, but there's 8 billion people on the world. So it's nothing new, but I feel kind of like some days where I'm like, I built this business. That
yes.
feels wild outside of my brain of how amazing that can be. It
I
was
mean, and
empowering.
that's the whole magic of being an artist is you've thought something into existence. It's come through
Right.
you. And yeah, it's so beautiful.
One last question
Sure.
then, because
I
we
could
could go
talk all
on
day.
forever.
I'm gonna say, the
I
sun would
love
be
it.
going down.
So natural, this conversation.
Yes.
What is your big audacious dream?
Ooh, okay. So big audacious dream for 2023 is to get me and my whole family to New Zealand to see my sister and my family there. She's been there for a decade now, and we have not been able to come. We've had little kids, and I mean, obviously, a hugely expensive trip. But I have every year been like, okay, maybe this is going to be the year. It's never going to make sense financially to put 5 people on a plane to New Zealand, and timing wise, it's always going to be tricky. But especially after COVID, and that they were super locked down there, and not
Right.
getting to be able to see one of my sisters for that long, and to not have seen my nephews. Like, I want to get there. I want to obviously just want to see the place, and experience a lot of New Zealand. So that's my sort of personal,
Yeah.
travel, yeah, life goal for this year. And then bigger picture for Ink and Indigo, I would say certainly I would like to own my own space one day. And I would like to own a space that I could both work and hopefully teach and host, but also, give other people opportunities with that space to either, whether it's like giving an artist who couldn't afford a studio, like a sublet part of that, or,
Mm,
I'm not exactly sure how I would, formulate all of these things, but I would just love to have this like beautiful creative space that also had parts of it that could be shared more broadly.
I love it.
And certainly big picture, financially too for the business is I would like to be able to, make a secure future for myself and my family, but for, the people who are working for me. And I would like to empower other people who are activists and,
Mm,
politicians, and especially parents and moms who are politicians. And I would like to be able to make enough money to be like the anti-Koch brothers of art. Like I would like to use all of my creative energies and funds that I could possibly to like turn some shit around, because yeah, I think
yeah.
in this
Oh,
capitalist country, that's
money is the only way to make
yeah,
politics happen, and
yeah. So
unfortunately,
I would like to empower other women, especially, for sure.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I
that was
love
a
it.
lot of things. I was
No, I love it. Like that's just yes.
yeah,
That's the whole purpose.
yes,
Personal things, bigger dreams. Like can totally see you owning like a nice big building where you have your space, you can showcase, you can teach, and then other people can
exactly.
come and have. That's really a great idea.
I believe it will happen. I'm very lucky to be the space I am renting from now. The folks who own it are a family who I've worked with and collaborated with, and then also, have been renting from. But they have sort of taken over all these other buildings in this area. So even if I'm not able to own one right away, I think I'll be able to find another space in one of these other creative spaces, which is all gonna. It's all very exciting. Seeing all these other creatives live out their dream and what
Yeah.
they're sort of creating is pretty
That's why
amazing.
I do what I do too. Like
Yeah,
I love helping all these artists build their dream business. That's like
yeah.
all I've done for the last 3 months is like, starting the Remarkable League and like diving in and helping them like it's not like they're like, okay, this is nice. They're like, oh my gosh, this is transformative. And I'm
Oh,
watching them have hope, single mothers
yes.
and sole providers that are just like, this is gonna change everything. And I like just
I love that so much.
with their creativity get to build this beautiful
Yeah.
future, and they know their children are watching, and I'm like, yes, my kids
Yes.
are watching too.
Oh, I mean, isn't that amazing that our kids just think this is a given?
Yeah,
Like, this is just, oh, yeah, you can grow up and start your own business. You can be creative and do whatever you want.
you
It's pretty
can.
awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so
Oh my
much.
God, thank you. I could
So
literally
how
talk to you all
can I
day.
find you? What, Ink and Indigo on
Ink and Indigo on
Instagram,
Instagram.
on your website?
On my website, which please, if you catch any funny little things, let me know, because I'm still slowly, it had to be very hand built. But Instagram is definitely still where I'm hanging out most on social media. I did reserve my Ink and Indigo on TikTok, but I have not,
Me too.
found my way over there. But you have inspired me too. One thing you've been saying is like, get over yourself and get behind that camera. So I need to practice that because I have never videoed anything live, and I don't think, I don't think I've ever done it. So I need to get over myself a little bit because I love showing process and all that stuff, but I've never done it like me, so I think it would be great.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. You're the best.
Next time, right?
That's right. Yeah, and we'll see you in Atlanta.
Awesome. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Kellee.